Next, Caleb Jiang. On the Awakening platform, Dean Abernathy, a man who looked like he'd been born with a tweed jacket and a permanent frown, adjusted his glasses and called out my name. His voice was tired, devoid of energy. It wasn't loud, but every senior at Northgate Academy for the Gifted turned to look. Their stares were a cocktail of 1 part curiosity and 2 parts pure, unadulterated ridicule. Haha, it's finally time for the school's reigning narcoleptic. I'll bet you $5 he awakens an F-class core talent. Something like a brick or maybe a flip-flop. You're thinking too small. My money's on a pillow or in a mask. You know, something that fits his brand. Listening to the barely hushed commentary, my best friend Leo started sweating bullets. He cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Go, Cal. You got this. Show him what you're made of." I shuffled forward, my lanky frame swimming in a faded, school-issued polo shirt. I've been told I'm not hard on the eyes, but my perpetually half-asleep expression tended to cancel that out. My name is Caleb Jiang, and I'm what you might call out of place. I've been in this world for 18 years, long enough to get used to the rules. This was a world where advanced tech and supernatural powers existed side by side. 18 was the great dividing line. Everyone got one shot to sync with the world's energy, the ether, and awaken their own core talent. The rank of that talent, from the God-tier SSS class down to the rock-bottom F class, pretty much decided your entire future. I sighed internally. It wasn't that I was nervous. I was just tired. I've been up all night trying to decipher the syntax of an ancient runic script and lost track of time. Yeah, that was my one and only hobby, studying old, indecipherable crap that nobody else cared about. To everyone else, I was just a slacker, a burnout who slept through every class. Hand on the sphere, Dean Abernathy grunted, jabbing a thumb toward the crystal orb in front of me. I yawned and lazily placed my palm against its cool surface. A low hum filled the air. The awakening sphere began to glow with a weak, milky white light, so faint it looked like a dying light bulb. The laughter from the crowd got louder. Told you, F-class. That's an F-class glow if I've ever seen one. White light, the lowest grade physical manifestation. Utterly useless. The dean shook his head, already starting to scribble F-class. No potential on his clipboard. Then, something impossible happened. A piece of black metal tucked under my shirt, something I'd always worn as a sort of good luck charm, suddenly became searing hot against my chest. A split second later, a beam of black light, invisible to the naked eye, shot out from the metal and lanced into the crystal sphere. The pathetic white glow convulsed as if it had been electrocuted. It flickered violently, colors spasming across its surface. White, green, blue, purple before with a soft pop, it just went out. Dead silence fell over the assembly. What? What just happened? Did the sphere just break? Holy crap. I've never seen that before. Dean Abernathy was just as clueless as everyone else. He tapped the unresponsive crystal, then scowled at me. Manifest your talent. It was the final step. No matter the rank, the core talent would take physical form in the user's hand. I held out my palm, my own heart starting to pound. That black metal piece, I'd had it on me ever since I arrived in this world. It didn't do anything except feel warm in the winter and cool in the summer. What the hell was that just now? 1 second, 2 seconds. My palm remained empty. A collective groan of disappointment rose from the crowd. So after all that drama, it was just a total failure. Didn't even get an F class. What a complete loser. Just then, I felt a slight weight settle into my hand. A flicker of dark light shimmered, and there it was. A palm-sized, pitch black, slightly rusted piece of scrap metal lying innocently in my hand. The shape, the texture, the overwhelming aura of cheapness. It looked like something you'd find on the side of the road. Someone snorted, then another, and then the entire plaza erupted in a tidal wave of hysterical laughter. Ha 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 ha. Scrap metal. It's literally a piece of scrap metal. F-class? That's got to be a Z-class. I've never even heard of that. We have a winner for the most pathetic talent of the year. Put in the school archives. On stage, I stared at the metal in my hand, my expression grim. I could feel it, though. A strange, blood-deep connection had formed between me and this thing. This was it. My core talent. A piece of junk. The dean's mouth twitched. He picked up his pen, hesitated for a long moment, and finally wrote next to my name, F-Class, Metal Shard. He even added a question mark. The secondhand embarrassment was just too much. "Get off the stage," he said, waving his hand like he was shooing a fly. I walked down the steps in silence and rejoined Leo. "Don't worry about it, Cal." Leo, my one and only friend, said, trying to sound upbeat. "A crappy talent doesn't mean your life is over. We can get our commercial driver's licenses, man. Truckers make good money." I managed a weak smile, not really hearing him. My entire focus was on a new voice that had just chimed in, not in the crowd, but inside my own head. Ping. Singularity engine activated. Unique function hyperacceleration has been bound to host. Current acceleration multiplier 10 to the power of 9, 1 billion. Host is detected practicing basic energy channeling technique. Activate hyperacceleration. My eyes widened. Singularity? Hyperacceleration? 1 billion times? In the privacy of my own mind, I thought one word. Yes. An indescribable, terrifying torrent of energy exploded through my body. The basic energy channeling technique was the most generic, bargain bin discipline in existence. It had 3 tiers. A normal person took a month to reach tier 1. A genius might do it in a week. But in that single instant, I felt the ether in my body go from 0 to light speed. Tier 1. Complete. Tier 2. Complete. Tier 3. Mastered. The entire process took less than 1/10 of a second. The rushing energy was moving so fast it blew right past the technique's limits, forging a completely new, more advanced circulatory path through my system. Basic energy channeling technique has mutated under hyperacceleration. Congratulations, host, on self-creating the Tier 4 discipline, the Thunderclap discipline. I just stood there, my mind a complete blank. This was 1 billion times acceleration. I looked down at the mundane piece of black metal in my hand. This wasn't scrap metal. This was the most overpowered thing in the universe. "Hey, loser, get out of the way." An arrogant voice cut through my shock. A tall kid decked out in designer athletic wear, the kind with built-in etheric conduits, swaggered toward me, flanked by his usual crew of hangers-on. His name was Landon Archer. His father was on the board of trustees, which made him Northgate's de facto prince. He'd awakened an A-class talent, the Flame Saber, and was already guaranteed a full ride to Blackstone University. Landon didn't even look at me as he passed, deliberately slamming his shoulder into mine. Leo bristled, ready to step up, but I grabbed his arm. "Let it go, Leo," I said, shaking my head. I didn't have time for small fry like him right now. My mind was reeling from the implications of hyperacceleration. Landon soaked up the attention, striding to the platform and placing his hand on the newly replaced awakening sphere. A brilliant crimson light erupted from the sphere, shooting into the sky and bathing the entire plaza in a fiery glow. The letter A materialized on its surface. A-class. It's really an A-class talent. Of course it is. It's Landon. The crowd erupted in cheers and envious gasps. Landon smirked, and a long, flickering blade of pure fire materialized in his hand. He surveyed the crowd like a king, his eyes finally landing on me. The corner of his mouth curled into a sneer that screamed, "See this? This is the difference between you and me." I didn't even register it. I pulled Leo away from the crowd and found a quiet corner to sit. "Don't let that jerk get to you, Cal. Landon's a first-class moron," Leo fumed. "I'm fine," I said, my mind elsewhere. I couldn't wait to see what else this thing could do. Host has skill, basic glyph theory. Activate hyperacceleration. Yes, a virtual screen seemed to flicker into existence in my mind's eye. An avalanche of knowledge, theories, techniques, insights about glyphs flooded my brain. The basic cleansing glyph, a simple rune for cleaning dust, was something I used to screw up 99 times out of 100. Now, I felt like I could draw a perfect version with my eyes closed. But it didn't stop there. Under the billion times acceleration, my brain automatically began optimizing, upgrading, and completely rewriting the base glyph. Cleansing glyph has mutated under hyperacceleration. Congratulations, host, on self-creating the rune. Detonation glyph. Detonation glyph causes all dust particles within a designated area to violently implode, generating a minor concussive shockwave. possesses offensive capabilities. I blinked. A cleaning spell was now a bomb. This acceleration thing was a little intense. The ceremony continued, but no one came close to Landon's A-class. Not until the very last person walked onto the stage. The entire plaza went silent. Serafina Cheen, Northgate's undisputed queen. The only person considered to be in Landon's league, even before the awakening. She had waist-length black hair, a face that was hauntingly beautiful, and an aura so cold it could give you frostbite. Rumor had it her family was powerful and deeply mysterious. Landon's gaze on her was pure possession. She didn't give him so much as a glance as she placed a slender hand on the sphere. An ethereal blue light, even more brilliant than Landon's, shot toward the clouds. Within the light, the faint outline of a phoenix made of ice seemed to cry out. And plus, the grade that appeared on the sphere made everyone gasp. Holy! A+. She's even higher than Landon. A cryo-phoenix bloodline. That's a legendary bloodline-type talent. Landon's face turned to stone. A single, crystalline feather, radiating an impossible cold, materialized in Serafina's hand. She dismissed it without a flicker of emotion, turned, and walked off the stage, not saying a word to anyone. When it was all over, Dean Abernathy cleared his throat. All students who awakened a D-class talent or higher will report to the training hall this afternoon for abilities testing. As for those below D-class, he paused, his eyes sweeping contemptuously over me and a few other unlucky ones. You can go home early. Your journey as a gifted individual ends here. The discrimination was blatant. The students who had failed or gotten low ranks hung their heads in shame. I, on the other hand, felt a smile tug at my lips. Go home sounded perfect to me. I grabbed the sighing Leo and turned to leave. Hey, Cal, wait up. A voice called out from behind. I turned to see Landon and his cronies blocking our path. Awakening a piece of scrap metal, and you still have a nerve to stick around? Landon sneered, looking down his nose at me. What do you want? Leo, despite being scared, stepped in front of me. Get lost, Chun. This doesn't concern you. One of Landon's goons shoved Leo, sending him stumbling. Landon stepped right up to me, his contempt practically dripping from him. Caleb, he said, his voice low and menacing, I'm warning you. Stay away from Serafina. You got that? Otherwise, I won't mind seeing just how well that little piece of junk can plug your throat. I blinked, feigning innocence. Are we friends? The sum total of my interactions with Serafina over 3 years was less than 10 words. Don't play dumb with me. Landon's face darkened. I don't care if you've been creeping on her for years. Starting today, if I see you so much as look in her direction again, I'll break your legs. With that, he turned and swaggered off with his crew. Leo scrambled up, his face red with anger. That guy is unbelievable. Cal, he must be jealous. He saw that Serafina actually looked at you today. I rubbed my nose. Looked at me? She looked at me the same way she looked at a piece of furniture. Still, I hadn't missed the flicker of genuine malice in Landon's eyes. Leo, you go on ahead. I gotta take care of something, I said, clapping him on the shoulder. What are you gonna do? Just hitting the restroom. 10 minutes later, in the woods behind the school's athletic fields, Landon was talking to one of his lackeys. During the abilities test this afternoon, find a chance to make it look like an accident. A serious injury. A broken arm or leg would be perfect, understand? Got it, Landon. Talking behind people's backs is a bad habit, you know? A lazy voice drifted out from behind them. Landon whipped around, his eyes widening. I was leaning against a tree, casually tossing the pathetic-looking metal shard up and down in my hand. You waste of space. You follow me. Landon's eyes flashed with anger. Wouldn't call it following, I smiled. Just figured some things are better settled sooner rather than later. Settle things? With what? Landon laughed like it was the funniest joke he'd ever heard. A piece of junk metal trash like you wants to challenge me. Before the words even left his mouth, his flame saber ignited in his hand, sending a wave of heat rolling toward me. Since you're so eager to die, don't blame me for helping you out. Landon roared, launching himself at me like a cannonball, his fiery blade swinging down at my head. For all his arrogance, the guy had real power. That strike had the force of a Tier 1 practitioner. Faced with the attack, I didn't even move. Just as the blade was about to split my skull, I casually lifted my left hand and flicked my finger. Tink! A tiny pebble shot from my fingertip, moving faster than the eye could see, and struck the flat of the flame saber with perfect precision. Landon's world exploded. An irresistible force slammed up the blade, shattering his grip. The flame saber flew out of his hand, flipping end over end before embedding itself deep into a tree behind him. He himself was thrown back several steps, landing hard on his butt, his face a mask of disbelief. Before he could say another word, I was in front of him, moving like a ghost. I placed a hand gently on his shoulder. He froze. A wave of icy energy poured into his body, sealing off his ether channels completely. His prized A-class talent was now as inert as a cold piece of steel. Your power level. Landon's voice was filled with terror. The strength of that energy. It was at least Tier 3. How could a loser who just awakened an F-class talent have Tier 3 power? Just awakened. Still getting the hang of it, I said with a grin. You call this just awakened? Who are you? Landon stammered, his arrogance replaced by pure fear. His body was shaking so badly, he practically crawled away, too scared to even breathe. Tier 3. Was he a monster? The highest level person at our entire school, Dean Abernathy included, was only Tier 5. A student hitting Tier 3 on day 1? It was impossible. I'm Caleb, I said, patting his cheek. You know the loser? I was wrong. Sir. Caleb. I was blind. Landon was a quick thinker. Groveling was a required skill for kids like him. Now, I said, crouching down to his level. Aren't you just saying something about breaking my legs? A cold sweat beaded on Landon's forehead. A misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I was just kidding. He forced a smile that was uglier than a grimace. Look, how about this? I'll compensate you. $10,000. No, $20,000. Just let me go. Money, I said, as if it were an interesting concept. I'm not interested in money. I was interested in something else. That sword of yours is pretty nice. My eyes drifted to the flame saber still stuck in the tree. An A-class talent, filled with pure fire ether. I wondered if my singularity engine could accelerate the process of absorbing it. Landon's heart sank. A core talent was linked to its user's soul. If it was destroyed, the user would be crippled. Sir, that's my core talent. Let me borrow it, I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. I let him go, walked to the tree, and yanked the flame saber free. A searing heat radiated from the hilt. A-class fire-type talent detected. Contains 3,600 units of ether. Activate hyperacceleration for absorption. Upon absorption, the singularity engine will unlock fire affinity. Host will gain the ability, pyrokinesis. My eyes lit up. A bonus prize? Yes. The black metal shard in my other hand suddenly pulsed with a powerful suction. The flames engulfing the saber were vacuumed toward the shard like water down a drain. The once magnificent sword dimmed and cracked before my eyes. No, Landon screamed, spitting up a mouthful of blood. He could feel the connection to his talent being brutally severed. His power level was plummeting. Tier 1. Awakening baseline. Crack. The flame saber disintegrated into a pile of useless slag. The black shard in my hand hadn't even warmed up. It was like it had just eaten an appetizer. Absorption complete. 3,600 units of ether acquired. Singularity engine upgrading. Fire affinity unlocked. Congratulations, host, on comprehending the ability. Basic pyrokinesis. I felt a new warmth spread through my body. I opened my palm and, with a thought, a small flame danced to life above it. The flame was small, but the pure fire ether it contained was even more potent than Landon's saber had been. My talent. My power. Landon was slumped on the ground, his face ashen. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. He was ruined. An A-class genius, crippled on the very day he awakened. Now we can have a proper conversation, I said, extinguishing the flame and walking over to him. You were saying you wanted to use my metal shard to plug my throat. Landon was trembling violently. A dark stain spread across the front of his pants. He had actually pissed himself in fear. I don't think that's how you use it. I shook my head, then lifted my foot and brought it down on his right leg. Crack. The sound of bones snapping echoed through the quiet woods. Ag! Landon's scream was inhuman. And also, I don't creep on Serafina. Crack, his other leg. Finally, I don't like being pointed at. Crack, his right arm. When I was done, I dusted off my hands as if I just squashed a few bugs. I glanced at the terrified lackey huddled nearby. Take him to the hospital. Oh, and tell him I'll cover the medical bills. With that, I turned, humming a little tune, and strolled out of the woods, leaving 2 broken figures and a pile of scrap metal behind. Back home, I threw myself onto the bed in my tiny rental apartment. The place was practically empty. My parents had disappeared during a dimensional rift expedition years ago, and I'd been living off a meager survivor's pension ever since. Singularity Engine. I thought, what's this ether I absorbed good for? Ether can be used to upgrade the Singularity Engine or be converted into the host's power level. Current convertible power level, Tier 4. Convert now? I didn't hesitate. Convert. A surge of energy, even more potent than before, flooded my system. The bottleneck of Tier 3 shattered instantly. Tier 4. Done. In just a few hours since the awakening, I had gone from a normal person to a Tier 4 practitioner. A growth rate that would shatter this world's understanding of reality. Apex Predator, for sure. I clenched my fists, feeling the power thrumming inside me. But I quickly reined it in. The engine's ability was too insane. If anyone found out, I'd become a lab rat for every major power on the planet. Rule number 1, stay low-key. I glanced at the clock. It was almost time for the afternoon abilities test. Guess I should go. I wasn't on the D-Class and Up list, but with Landon getting crippled, the school would definitely investigate. I had to be there to establish an alibi. Besides, I was curious what my F-Class piece of junk could do now that it had eaten an A-Class talent. That afternoon, the training hall was packed with over 100 students, all of them the elite D-Class and above. Every face was glowing with pride and excitement. When I strolled in, everyone stared at me like I was an idiot. Am I seeing things? The scrap metal loser actually showed up. Didn't the dean say anyone below D-Class wasn't allowed? He probably just wants to gawk. A teacher at the registration table stopped me. Student, this is a restricted area for abilities testing. You need to. I'm just looking for someone, sir, I said smoothly. My friend, Leo Chun, D-Class kinetic shield talent. He just went inside. The teacher looked at me skeptically, but waved me through. Make it quick, and don't cause any trouble. I thanked him and ambled in. The first person I saw was Serafina Chin, surrounded by a wide, empty circle as guys tried and failed to work up the courage to approach her. As if sensing my gaze, her cold eyes met mine for the first time. I gave her a friendly nod. She seemed momentarily surprised, then looked away, her expression impassive. But I was sure I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Just then, the doors to the hall slammed open. Dean Abernathy marched in, his face grim, followed by several other school administrators. Did you hear? Landon Archer was attacked. Both his legs and an arm were broken, and his core talent was destroyed. What? Who would do that? Who has the guts? The news spread like wildfire, stunning everyone. Landon, the A-Class genius, son of a board member, crippled on day 1. It was insane. The dean took the stage, his face thunderous. Quiet, he roared. This morning, one of our students, Landon Archer, was viciously attacked on school grounds. The school will investigate this heinous act to the fullest extent and punish the perpetrator severely. His sharp gaze swept over every student. Now, all of you will proceed with the abilities testing, one by one. No one is excused. It was obviously a dragnet. Whoever took down an A-Class talent had to be powerful. I had to smile. They could search until the end of time. They'd never suspect an F-Class burnout. The tests began. The first kid up had a C-Class blast knuckle talent. He walked up to a huge black machine, a power meter, took a deep breath, and slammed his fist into it. The numbers on the screen jumped, settling at 300 kg. Not bad. The equivalent of an early Tier 1, the dean noted. One by one, the students went up. The numbers ranged from 100 to 500, with a few B-Class talents hitting close to 1,000. When it was Leo's turn, he nervously summoned his shield for a defensive test. A robotic arm slammed into it with 1,000 kilos of force. Leo went flying, but he was unharmed. D-class kinetic shield passed. Finally, it was Seraphina's turn. She was the center of attention. She walked to a different machine, this one for elemental output, and lightly touched it. The crystal feather manifested and shot a beam of blue light at the sensor. A thick layer of frost instantly coated the machine's surface. The temperature reading on the screen plummeted to -100 degrees C. The whole room gasped. The power was terrifying. After she finished, everyone had been tested. The dean frowned, clearly not having found any suspects. Just as he was about to dismiss everyone, an out-of-place figure shuffled forward. "Excuse me, sir. You forgot me." Every head turned. Their jaws dropped. "Caleb Jiang, what was this loser doing?" "This is absurd," the dean snapped. "We'll let you up here. Get down." "Sir, didn't you just say that no one was excused?" I asked with a straight face. "I'm a student here. I should cooperate with the investigation." The dean was speechless for a second. Then he gave a humorless laugh. "Fine, you want to test? I'll let you test. If you can even make the machine flicker, I'll admit I was wrong." He refused to believe a piece of scrap metal had any power at all. I smiled and walked up to the power meter. I didn't summon my talent. I just made a fist. What's he doing? Is he going to punch it barehanded? He's crazy. Without a talent, a normal person would be lucky to hit 50 kilos. This is going to be hilarious. Amid all the pitying and mocking stares, I took a quiet breath, channeling the ether of a Tier 4 practitioner into my right fist. Then, with what looked like a casual swing, I punched the machine. There was no sound, no rush of wind. My fist just gently connected with the black metal surface. 1 second, 2 seconds. The machine didn't react. Laughter started to bubble up from the crowd. The dean's smirk widened, and in the next second, every sound in the room died. CRK, a tiny, almost inaudible cracking sound. Then, starting from where my fist rested, a spiderweb of cracks spread across the face of the massive machine. A machine built of special alloys to withstand thousands of kilograms of force. The cracks raced across its surface. Boom! The entire machine exploded. Shrapnel and sparking components flew in every direction. The students in the front row were thrown to the ground by the shockwave. The training hall fell into a silence, so deep you could hear a pin drop. Everyone stared, frozen, at me slowly lowering my fist and at the smoking heap of wreckage behind me. The clipboard fell from the dean's hand with a clatter. His mouth was wide enough to fit an egg, his eyes full of dumbfounded shock. Even Seraphina's icy composure had cracked, her eyes wide with disbelief. I blew on my knuckles, which were perfectly fine, and turned to the petrified dean. I scratched my head, trying to look sheepish. "Sir, does that count as a flicker?" I asked. "Also, is this thing under warranty?" The silence stretched for a full minute before the room erupted. Holy crap! Holy crap! Holy crap! He blew up the power meter. With one punch. That thing could take a full power hit from a Tier 5. He's F-class. How is that F-class? Everyone's understanding of the world had just been shattered. They looked at me with a mixture of awe, fear, and utter confusion. This was more shocking than Landon's A-class or Seraphina's A+. This broke all the rules. The dean snapped out of his stupor. He scrambled over to me, grabbing my hand, his whole body trembling with excitement. "Student, your name is Caleb Jiang, right?" he stammered. You've been hiding your power." He was looking at me like I was an uncut diamond. What F-class scrap metal? This was clearly a case of a master hiding in plain sight. An SSS-class talent that focused on pure physical enhancement. They had all been blind. "Sir, you need to calm down," I said, trying to pull my hand back from his spittle-flecked tirade. "Calm down? How can I be calm?" he insisted. "Caleb, you are a genius. An absolute genius. The school has failed you. On behalf of the entire administration, I apologize." He actually bowed to me. The other students looked on, dumbfounded. Was this the same rigid, condescending Dean Abernathy they all knew? "From this day forward, you are Northgate's most prized student," he declared. "The school's best resources, our most advanced techniques, will all be available to you. I'm going to apply for an S-class genius grant for you immediately." I sighed. All I wanted was an alibi. I might have overdone it. "Sir, actually, I understand." "I understand." He cut me off, a knowing look on his face. Geniuses often have their reasons for laying low. Don't you worry. Your secret is safe with us. He had already constructed an entire backstory for me, a prodigious talent hiding from powerful enemies by pretending to be a nobody. Well, if he was going to do the work for me, who was I to argue? Wait, the attacker. That punch. The dean's eyes lit up. He lowered his voice. Landon, was that you? Nope, I said, shaking my head without batting an eye. My hand's still sore from that punch. See? It's all red. I held up my perfectly pale fist. The dean looked from my hand to the smoking wreckage and back again. He seemed to be considering it. It almost made sense. A person who could obliterate the testing machine with one punch wouldn't just break Landon's limbs. He'd probably have turned him into a fine paste. It must have been someone else. Having reasoned this out, the dean's expression became even warmer. Good. An honest boy, he said, patting my shoulder. You go home and rest. Leave the S-Class grant to me. I nodded and walked out of the training hall, followed by 100 pairs of awestruck, jealous, and curious eyes. Leo trailed behind me like a zombie, muttering, Cal, you're a god. I paused at the door and bent down, picking something up off the floor, a crystalline feather, radiating a faint chill. I turned and called out to Serafina, who was getting ready to leave. Hey, she stopped, her cold eyes fixing on me. I held up the feather and grinned. Miss, you dropped this. Serafina stared at the feather in my hand, and for the first time, a look of genuine shock appeared on her face. That was her core talent. It was bonded to her very soul. It couldn't leave her side unless she was dead or consciously dismissed it. Yet here it was in my hand, and she hadn't felt a thing. What did that mean? It meant that in the instant I picked it up, I had somehow, in a way she couldn't comprehend, severed her connection to it. Just what kind of monster was he? The other students noticed, too, their eyes darting back and forth between us, the gossip mill already churning. Serafina frowned and strode over, a faint, cool fragrance trailing her. Give it back, she said, her voice as cold as her talent. Sure. I held it out. As she reached for it, I leaned in and spoke in a voice only she could hear. There's a flaw in your discipline. Her body went rigid. She looked up, and for the first time, her blue eyes were sharp as shards of ice. What did you say? The cryo-heart discipline, right? I smiled. It's a high-level technique, but it has a fatal flaw. Every full moon, the cold energy turns on you. The pain is unbearable, like your veins are filled with knives. The stronger you get, the worse the backlash becomes. In less than 3 years, you'll freeze to death from the inside out, becoming a permanent ice sculpture. The color drained from her face. I was right, word for word. It was her deepest secret, a curse passed down through her family. No one outside of her family's inner circle could possibly know. How'd he know? Who are you? She whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and suspicion. Just a concerned citizen, I shrugged. It'd be a shame for someone so pretty to die so young. Why should I believe you? Don't have to, I said, but I happen to know how to fix it. With that, I turned to leave her standing there. Wait, she called out. Yeah. She bit her lip, that perpetually frozen expression finally cracking with indecision. At last, as if she'd made a monumental choice, she asked, Where? Where what? The solution. Where can I find you? I thought for a moment and gave her my address. Anytime after 7 tonight. I waved over my shoulder and walked away, leaving her clutching the feather, her mind in turmoil. Back home, I got a text from my bank. A deposit of $5 million has been made to your account, ending in XXXX. $5 million. The S-Class Genius Grant. The school works fast, I muttered, satisfied. Time for an upgrade. This dump was no longer suitable for a distinguished S-Class genius like myself. I opened an app called Nexus Properties, a real estate platform for the gifted, and filtered for properties with the highest level ether condensers. A listing for a private villa in Port Meridian's wealthiest district, Celestial Heights, caught my eye. Celestial Heights, Villa 1. Private tier, 3 ether condenser, ambient energy, 10 times the normal concentration. Price, $100 million. $100 million. I whistled. Looks like $5 million wasn't going to cut it. I'd have to settle for renting a nice apartment for now. Just then, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, is this Caleb Jiang? A respectful, almost fawning voice asked. This is he. Ah, Caleb, my boy. This is Landon's father, Marcus Archer. I raised an eyebrow. The big boss himself. Mr. Archer, what can I do for you? My son was an idiot. He offended you. And that's a failure of my parenting. I've grounded him indefinitely. Marcus Archer's tone was incredibly humble. I was hoping you might have some time soon, so I could visit and apologize in person with a small gift. His A-class genius son gets crippled, and instead of seeking revenge, the father calls to apologize? I understood immediately. He was scared, or rather, he was scared of the powerful organization he imagined was backing me. In his mind, only a terrifying clan or secret school could produce a monster who could destroy the testing machine with one punch. And a smart businessman like him would never make a move until he knew who he was dealing with. An apology isn't necessary, I said coolly. However, I've been thinking about buying a new house, and I'm a little short on cash. The message was received loud and clear. A house. That's no problem at all, he said quickly. Which one has caught your eye? I'll arrange it immediately. Consider my apology. Celestial Heights, Villa 1. Celestial Heights, Villa 1. His voice cracked. That was the most expensive property in the city. But then he thought of his son's broken body and my unfathomable power. He gritted his teeth. Done. Caleb, my boy, I'll handle the transfer right now. The deed will be in your hands before the end of the day. Much appreciated. I hung up, a small smile on my face. The efficiency of the rich was truly something to behold. I put my phone down and thought about Serafina. I didn't know about the flaw in her discipline because I was some kind of expert. The Singularity engine had automatically analyzed her Cryo-Phoenix feather the moment I touched it. A+, class talent Cryo-Phoenix feather analysis in progress. Bloodline origin. Ancient Cryo-Phoenix fragmented. Bound discipline. Cryo-Heart discipline high tier. Discipline flaw. Yin attribute cold energy is excessive. Lacks yang attribute balance. High probability of backlash. Calculating optimization solutions. 100% success rate. Solution 1. Find yang attribute treasure, solar essence to neutralize. Solution 2. Practice dual cultivation technique, the Jade Maiden Sutra. Solution 3. Modify the Cryo-Heart discipline. Hyperacceleration engaged. Calculation complete. Optimized discipline acquired. Cryo-Divinity method peak tier. It had all happened in a flash. When I saw the notification for a peak-tier discipline, my own jaw had dropped. A high-tier discipline was the stuff of legends in Port Meridian. A peak tier? There were probably only a handful in the entire country. And I had just created one. That was the terrifying power of the Singularity engine. It didn't just accelerate my training. It could analyze, calculate, and optimize anything. If Sarah knew about this, she might just offer herself up as payment. I chuckled to myself. Ding dong. The doorbell. I opened the door to find a man in a sharp suit, sweating profusely and holding out a file containing a property deed. Mr. Jiang, as promised. 30 minutes later, I was standing in front of Villa 1 in Celestial Heights. The place was massive, an ultra-modern 3-story mansion with its own garden and pool on a property that had to be at least an acre. Even for someone who'd lived 2 lives, it was impressive. The life of the rich is so dull. I deadpanned, pressing my thumb to the scanner and opening the front door. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a thick wave of ether wash over me. The Tier 3 condenser buried under the house was pulling in energy from the earth itself. Training for 1 day here would be like 10 days anywhere else. Not bad at all. I nodded. 100 million well spent. By Mr. Archer, anyway. After a long soak in a bathtub the size of my old apartment, I headed straight for the villa's dedicated training room. Singularity, let's go. Ether reserve. 3,600 units. Training mode initiated. Hyperacceleration engaged. The ether above the villa swirled into a vortex, pouring down into the training room. My power level began to skyrocket. Tier 4 mid-phase. Tier 4 late phase. Tier 4 peak. In 10 minutes, I'd covered ground that would take others months. But it wasn't over. A crisp crack echoed inside me. The bottleneck to Tier 5 shattered. Congratulations, host. You have advanced to Tier 5. I opened my eyes, a sharp light flashing within them. I felt a power, several times stronger than before, surging through me. It was too fast. Simply too fast. I checked my ether reserves. I still had 2,600 units left. If Landon knew his sacrifice had propelled me this far, he'd probably have an aneurysm. Stay humble, stay hidden. I forced myself to calm down. From now on, my public-facing power level would always be a tier or two below my actual strength. Ding dong. The doorbell again. I checked the security camera and was surprised to see Serafina standing at my gate. She'd changed out of her uniform and was wearing a simple white dress. The moonlight made her look ethereal, like a goddess who had just descended to the mortal realm. I let her in. Something I can help you with. She looked at me, her eyes complex. Can you really do it? She asked, getting straight to the point. Yes, I nodded. Come in. She hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The instant she felt the rich ether in the air, her eyes widened. A Tier 3 condenser. There were less than 5 of these in the entire city. Who was he? Have a seat, I said, gesturing to the sofa. She sat down, her posture a bit stiff. It was clearly her first time in a guy's house, especially a guy like me. Tell me your terms, she said directly. What do you want in return? She didn't believe in free lunches. Straight to business. I like it. I smiled, handing her a glass of water. My condition is simple. I need you to be let's call it a managing partner. What? She shot to her feet, nearly dropping the glass. A rare flush of color appeared on her icy cheeks. You're shameless. For her, the proud daughter of the Qin family, the object of affection for countless young men, to be someone's subordinate? It was an insult. Relax, I said, motioning for her to sit. I don't mean it in a demeaning way. I need someone I can trust to handle things for me publicly, to be the face of an organization, a company. You would be the one in charge. I would simply provide the products from behind the scenes. My plan was clear. The Singularity Engine was too powerful. Alchemy, enchanting glyphs formations. With enough energy, I could become a grandmaster in any field. I needed a proxy, a public face, to help me convert these inventions into the resources I needed. Serafina, with her talent, mysterious background, and the leverage I had on her, was the perfect candidate. She stared at me, stunned. This was not the condition she had been expecting. She was silent for a long time, weighing her options. On one side was her family's curse and a certain, painful death. On the other was a temporary loss of freedom to act as the proxy for a mysterious powerhouse. It wasn't a difficult choice. How do I know the technique you give me is real? She asked. I smiled and drew 2 fingers through the air. A blade of pure, condensed ether shot out and carved a deep, thin line into the far wall, without a single wisp of energy escaping into the room. Her pupils contracted to pinpoints. That level of control was godlike. Not even the master tier elders in her family could do that. Do you believe me now? She took a deep breath and then slowly bowed. Serafina Qin, at your service. Boss, that's better, I said. Now the technique. Yes, please. She held out her hand. I shook my head. First, you need to make an ether-bound oath. To serve me, to never betray me, and to never reveal my secrets. The penalty is the annihilation of your soul. It was the most binding contract in this world. She didn't hesitate. I, Serafina Qin, swear by the ether. As she spoke, an invisible law descended, branding both of our souls. The pact was made. Good. I pointed my finger at her forehead. A massive stream of information, the entire cryodivinity method, flowed into her mind. She barely skimmed it before her entire body began to tremble. The technique didn't just solve her backlash problem. It elevated the discipline to a level she couldn't have imagined. It could even manifest a legendary ice divinity avatar at its peak. This is a peak tier technique, she gasped. The best technique her family, one of the most powerful in the country, possessed was a fragmented high tier one. Peak tier? I guess, I said. I just tweaked it a little. Didn't pay much attention to the rank. Tweaked it a little? Her view of the world was shattering all over again. All right, now that you have the technique, let's talk business, I said. As you command, boss. First, I need resources. A lot of them. High-level talents, ether crystals, ancient herbs, anything with pure, dense energy. The more, the better. She nodded. Understand. The Qin family has operations across the country. I can use our network to acquire these for you. Excellent. Second, I need a company, an auction house, specifically to sell my inventions. Inventions? I grinned and pulled out one of the yellow paper glyphs I'd created. It's called a detonation glyph. Try using it on that vase. She took the glyph, channeled a tiny bit of ether into it, and tossed it toward an expensive-looking antique vase in the corner. The glyph ignited in midair, and all the dust in the air around the vase imploded. Pop! The priceless vase disintegrated into fine powder. The small shockwave made her dress and hair flutter. Serafina was speechless. She knew the basic cleansing glyph. This wasn't a cleaning tool. It was a demolition tool. Cost to make is about $1, I said. What do you think it would sell for at auction? She took a deep breath. In the right situation, one of these could sell for 100,000. Maybe more. And that, I said, a grin spreading across my face, is just the appetizer. I have pills, artifacts, formations. Things you can't even imagine. I'm going to make every practitioner in the world go crazy for my inventions. She looked at me, a chill running down her spine. She finally understood. He wanted to, by himself, monopolize the entire high-end supernatural market. It was an insane, magnificent plan. A fire I hadn't felt in a long time ignited in her eyes. What's the company's name? I thought for a moment. Let's call it Apex. 3 days later, a new, discreetly opened auction house appeared in Port Meridian. Its name was Apex. The proprietor was a stunningly beautiful young woman named Serafina Qin. The news sent ripples through the city's elite. The Qin family's princess, an A-plus class genius, was opening an auction house. The first auction was an exclusive affair. Only 50 invitations were sent out, all to the city's most powerful figures. Marcus Archer was one of them. When he saw the name, Apex, he had a bad feeling it was connected to the terrifying young man who had crippled his son. That night, Serafina, dressed in a black evening gown, took the stage and got straight to the point. Our first item tonight is a new type of glyph. 10 simple, yellow paper glyphs were presented on a tray. These are called detonation glyphs. The crowd murmured. They'd never heard of them. Serafina simply took one and tossed it at a reinforced, bulletproof glass case set up on the stage. Pop! The case, which could withstand a full power blow from a late-tier practitioner, shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. The room went dead silent. This was a cleaning spell. 10 glyphs per set, Serafina's cool voice announced. Bidding starts at $1 million. The bidding was frantic. The final price for the set of 10 was $3 million. The rest of the auction was even more insane. An instant recovery pill that could restore 50% of a person's ether in a second. A diamond skin glyph that could block a strike from a master tier practitioner. Each item was more unbelievable than the last. By the end of the night, the name Apex was on everyone's lips. Meanwhile, I was lounging on the sofa in my villa, watching a live stream of the event on my phone. Ping. A text from Serafina. Total sales, $130 million. Net profit, $129,999,000. I smiled. Making money, it seemed, was also 1,000,000,000 times faster for me. The emergence of Apex sent shockwaves through the practitioner community. Everyone was trying to figure out who was behind it, but all leads stopped at the Qin family. The family's status rose to new heights, and Serafina became a recognized power player in her own right. Only she knew she was just a puppet for the mysterious man in the shadows. At the same time, in the principal's office at Northgate Academy, the principal and Dean Abernathy were respectfully serving tea to a stern-looking man in a sharp, tailored suit. Professor Wallace, it is an honor to have you visit our humble school, the principal gushed. This is a big deal. Professor Wallace was the head of recruitment for Ethelgard University, the most prestigious institution for the gifted in the country. I'm here for 2 students, Wallace said, getting straight to the point. The first is Serafina Qin, an A-plus cryo-phoenix bloodline. Ethelgard will take her. The principal and dean beamed. Of course, an honor. And the second. Wallace looked down at a file, frowning slightly. Caleb Jiang, F-class, metal shard. He looked up confused. But the addendum here says he destroyed your power meter with a single punch? Yes, Professor, the dean explained eagerly. We believe his talent is a rare SSS class physical enhancement type, a master hiding in plain sight. SSS class. Wallace gave a non-committal smile. He'd seen more so-called geniuses than they could count. Still, the report was interesting. Have him come see me. 10 minutes later, I walked into the office, yawning. You're Caleb Jiang? Wallace sized me up. He saw a lazy-looking kid, his energy perfectly concealed. A Tier 5 practitioner. Impressive for a new student, but hardly earth-shattering. It says here you destroyed a testing machine. Lucky punch, I said. Then how about you try taking a lucky punch at me? Wallace stood up. An immense pressure, heavy as a mountain, filled the room. An adept, and a powerful one at that. The principal and the dean turned pale under the pressure. I was completely unaffected. Where do you want it? I asked with genuine curiosity. Wallace laughed. Bold. I like it. He held up his palm. Right here. You know, you could actually die. I warned him. Die, he chuckled. Son, I'm a late-phase adept specializing in physical reinforcement. A master tier couldn't kill me with one punch. Okay, then, since he was asking so nicely. I made a fist, but this time I didn't hold back. The full power of my Tier 5 ether, compressed and focused by the Singularity Engine's hyperacceleration, gathered in my knuckles. I even mixed in a little of the pyrokinesis I'd borrowed from Landon. I swung. The punch seemed slow, silent. Wallace was still smiling, but as my fist drew close to his palm, the smile vanished from his face. A terrifying sense of crisis, a feeling that shook him to his very soul, washed over him. He tried to move, but my punch seemed to have locked him in place. He tried to summon his energy, but my fist was too fast, faster than thought. Crap, was the only thought that flashed through his mind. An unimaginable force exploded against his palm. His arm, which could withstand blows from magical artifacts, shattered from wrist to shoulder. The force ripped through his defenses and savaged his insides. He sprayed a mouthful of blood and flew backward like a rag doll, crashing through the office wall, through a hallway, and through 2 more walls before finally coming to a stop in a pile of rubble, unconscious. The principal's office was in ruins, a man-shaped hole in the wall letting in a cold breeze. The principal and the dean stood frozen, their souls seemingly having fled their bodies. They stared at me as I slowly lowered my fist. What had just happened? Professor Wallace, an adept tier powerhouse, had been taken out with one punch. I blew on my knuckles. Told you he could die. He just wouldn't listen. I turned to the 2 statues. So, that Ethelgard scholarship, is that still on the table? Why, yes. Of course. The principal stammered. Cool. I nodded, then stepped through the hole in the wall. I walked over to the rubble and found the unconscious professor. He was still breathing, just badly injured. Guess I hit him a little too hard. I mused. I hadn't realized my power had become so overwhelming. I took out one of the pills from my inventory, a super enhanced version of the recovery pill, and popped it into his mouth. I stood up, mission accomplished. You should probably call an ambulance, I told the dumbstruck administrators, then casually walked away. Half an hour later, Professor Wallace woke up in the VIP wing of Port Meridian General Hospital. The worst of his injuries were already healing, thanks to the pill. That student, Caleb, where is he? He rasped. He left. Wallace closed his eyes, replaying that punch in his mind. It wasn't just power. It was something more, a mastery of principles he couldn't even comprehend. If that boy had wanted to kill him, he'd be dead. SSS class. He murmured with a bitter laugh. We were so wrong. He wasn't some SSS class talent. He was a god walking among mortals. Get the car. Wallace roared, sitting bolt upright. Take me to his house. No, wait. Bring our most sincere offer of admission. I'm going to recruit him personally. I, meanwhile, was back at my villa, counting my first dividend from Apex, a cool $100 million. With this, I could have Seraphina acquire resources on a much larger scale. As long as I had energy, the Singularity Engine could rocket me to the top. The doorbell rang. It was Seraphina, dressed in a stunningly professional suit. Boss, she said, handing me a folder. The plan for the next auction. I tossed it aside. You handle it. There's one other thing, she said. My grandfather wants to meet you. Her grandfather? Elder Cheen, a legend in the country's practitioner circles. A peak phase master. Why? Because of the cryo-divinity method, she said. He knows I have a new technique. I told him I received it from a powerful senior I met by chance. He wants to meet this senior and thank him. I smiled. Thank him or size me up. A person who could hand out peak tier techniques will be a person of interest to any major family. Not interested. I was focused on leveling up, not playing politics with old foxes. He said, Serafina continued, as if expecting my refusal, that if you agree to meet, you may choose any 3 items from the Qin family's ancestral vault. My eyes lit up. When? Tonight, 7 o'clock, the Qin estate. Deal. That evening, I walked through the ancient, sprawling grounds of the Qin family estate. At its very heart, in a private study, a white-haired but imposing old man sat with his eyes closed. This was Elder Qin. I could feel the ocean of power contained within his frail-looking body. Grandfather, I've brought him. Elder Qin opened his eyes. They seemed to hold entire galaxies. He studied me for a long moment, then smiled. A hero born from the youth. To have such power and composure at your age. I am impressed. He couldn't see through me at all, which only deepened his shock. Let's skip the pleasantries, Elder Qin, I said. I gave her the technique. When do I get to see the vault? He laughed. So direct. I like it. But before we go to the vault, I have one small request. He stood and walked toward me. I'd like to test your strength myself. The atmosphere turned to ice. Grandfather, Serafina began, but he silenced her with a look. I just smiled. What kind of test? Simple, he said, raising one finger. I will use one attack. If you can withstand it, the vault is yours. If you cannot, then you will have to introduce me to the senior who is guiding you. He still didn't believe the power was my own. Fine, I said. Let's do it. His eyes sharpened. The terrifying pressure of a peak phase master erupted, warping the very space in the room. Be ready, young man. He thrust his finger forward. It was a simple move, but it commanded all the ether in the room, focusing it into an unstoppable, invisible beam aimed right between my eyes. His ultimate technique. I didn't even blink. In my mind, I just said one word. Singularity. Peak phase master tier attack detected. Analyzing. Hyperacceleration engaged. Flaws identified. Optimal counter strategy. Reflect. It all happened in an instant. Just as his attack was about to hit me, the black metal shard materialized in front of my face. The beam hit it and vanished without a ripple. Elder Qin's eyes widened in horror. His attack was gone. Before he could process it, the shard trembled, and an identical, even more powerful beam shot back out, 10 times faster. He didn't have time to dodge. His own ultimate attack slammed into his chest. He coughed up a spray of golden blood and flew backward, shattering a 1,000-year-old ironwood desk before collapsing in a heap. One move, Elder Qin, a legend, was defeated by his own technique. Serafina stared, her mind blank with a shock that transcended words. I walked over to the gasping old man. The vault, I asked. Why, yes, of course. Whenever you're ready. He wheezed, looking at me as if I were a demon. He finally believed it. There was no senior. I was the senior. He dragged his broken body down to the vault, a massive chamber filled with treasures that glowed with an overwhelming power. 3 items, as promised. He croaked, his heart bleeding. I ignored the weapons and the technique scrolls. I needed one thing. Energy. My eyes scanned the room. The Singularity engine feeding me data. Heavenly tier treasure, Southern Firestone detected. Contains 500,000 units of fire attribute, ether. I'll take that one, I said, grabbing a fist-sized red rock. Heavenly tier treasure, Nether Spring water detected. Contains 650,000 units of soul attribute, ether. That too, I said, absorbing an entire pool of black liquid. Elder Qin looked like he was about to have a stroke. And the third, he trembled. My eyes landed on a dusty, forgotten meditation cushion in the corner. What's that? Unknown object detected. Energy level. Warning. High-dimensional law, signature detected. Host is advised to acquire this object immediately. My heart leaped. That old thing, the elder said, confused. An ancestor found it. It just helps clear the mind. It's useless. I'll take it, I said decisively. He stared at me, then at the priceless treasures I'd ignored, his mind reeling. Was he an idiot, or was I? He couldn't understand, but he didn't dare ask. Back at the villa, I immediately took out the cushion. The moment I channeled ether into it, my soul was ripped into a cosmos of pure, universal law. Ping. Host has entered enlightenment state. Hyperacceleration engaged. Analysis of universal laws has begun. This thing was an artifact for comprehending the Tao itself. This was infinitely more valuable than any technique or treasure. But first, power. Singularity, absorb the new resources. Absorption complete. Total ether reserve, 1,152,600 units. Convert it all to power. A cataclysmic amount of energy detonated inside me. My power level didn't just climb, it launched. Tier 5, Tier 6, 7, 8, 9, peak tier. In 1 hour, I had reached the limit of the foundation stage. Keep going. I roared in my mind. Break through to adept. My energy began to change, to condense from gas to liquid. It was a qualitative leap. A powerful aura, far beyond anything I'd wielded before, erupted from my body, shattering the windows of my villa and causing every practitioner for miles to stare in my direction in terror. In the Qin estate, Elder Qin felt the shockwave and whispered, a tear rolling down his cheek. It's him. A genius like him is a blessing for our entire nation. In the training room, I opened my eyes. They seemed to contain galaxies. I clenched my fist, and the space around it warped. Congratulations, host. You have successfully advanced to the adept tier, from awakening to adept. For others, it was a journey of decades. For me, it had taken less than a day. I felt the boundless power in my veins and smiled. Being on top feels pretty good. I stood and looked out at the night sky. A new era, my era, was just beginning. End.